Hi, Tracy. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing very well. Thank you. And welcome to the Vegan Pulse. I'm thrilled to have you
I'm
with
thrilled
us
to be here.
today.
Thank you.
I'm sure your insight and experiences are something, well, I know I've been looking eagerly to
Mm,
hear and share with the listeners. So thank you again for taking this time to join us. So let's dive right in, right
great.
in. Where in the world are you joining us from today?
I am in Lillian, Alabama, which is along the Gulf Coast. I'm like in between Mobile, Alabama, and Pensacola, Florida, kind of right on the border of Florida. But Lillian, Alabama, deep, deep south.
Okay. And then, of course, the question I ask everyone is, how did you get to veganism?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, it was a little bit of a winding path, but the sort of I think big, highlights that got me here. I was raised by an animal. Both my parents loved animals, but my dad was a little bit of like the quintessential crazy cat man, and was always actually like bringing home animals who needed help, like abandoned sparrows he would find at work. And so I grew up with just like a real love of animals, but we also ate animals. And it was probably when I was like 16 that somebody gave me a PETA booklet. And I think that was like probably the first introduction to really even thinking about eating animals. And I remember at the time, my dad and I both went vegetarian, might have even gone vegan slash vegetarian. I can't remember. Maybe it started off as vegan, vegetarian, something, but went veg. But then I went back and forth for like 15 years, which, I'm so sorry to say that, but I think I just battled with all the things that people battle with, like denial. And I also, I'm a little old. I'm 51. And so when I was 16, it was like, pre-internet, and it was a little easier to bury our heads. And I remember telling myself that like when I found out about the horrors of like factory farming, and then at some point, I told myself that they must have fixed it. Like if I knew about what was happening, then the government must know, and they wouldn't allow that. That can't be legal. It can't be something we accept. And so at some point, I was like, well, they must have fixed it. And anyway, it was back and forth, 15 years of like seeing the truth and being like, how can that be? Finding out about the males of the egg industry, or, mother cows having their babies stolen, and then seeing the humane labels. And for the longest time, I was like, well, they couldn't be lying. How could that be legal? And I would just go back and forth. And it was finally after, all of that inner struggle and struggling with the world, et cetera, it was a combination, like how two last kind of trigger points. I was doing some anti-fur activism, and I remember just watching an undercover video of a raccoon dog in China who had been skinned alive. And the horror of that, combined with, I had a dog at the time who had cancer and was going through some kind of cancer treatment, and she was really suffering from the treatment. And I was like doing it to her because I had elected to do the treatment. And I needed to know that I wasn't doing it for myself, but that I was doing it for her. And I just made this vow. It was like seeing that video and what my dog Penelope was going through. It just like all kind of broke me. And in this moment, everything I'd been learning and denying for all those years, I just realized, I just stopped denying it. I knew it was true. And I sort of pledged that I would never again do anything consciously to contribute to the suffering of animals. And that was like close to 20 years ago, I guess now.
Yeah, and that's what happens with people. Like they don't really want to do it, but then somebody else will take care of it. Somebody else will fix it. I can't believe that this is legal, like you said.
Right.
But it is just crazy stuff when you
Yeah.
find out about it, because it
Yeah.
blows your mind. How could you
Yeah, it's
allow
hard to
this?
believe. I mean, it really is hard to wrap your head around. I still struggle with it, honestly. Like, I think I still have some denial as a way of kind of coping. with functioning in the world. It's like if we're conscious of what's happening all the time, it's overwhelming and paralyzing. And so I think that, still I'm conscious that there's a part of my brain that shuts it out in order to, I mean, I think of it a lot, but yeah, it's accepting that, I grew up believing that the world was like a basically good place, that people were basically good people, that the government was here to take care of the innocent, and I think, yeah, that the sort of the vegan awakening, it's like you have to, you wake up to the fact that there's a lot more cruelty and suffering in the world than we, imagine. And it is hard to grasp,
Is like
really.
right, and like you said, the vegan awakening is more about learning the truth, like having
Yeah.
truth brought forward, and you have to face
Right.
it. And I struggle the same as you said when I'm watching something, um, and I can't watch too much of it because every
Right.
day, every morning, every night, like I'm
Right.
thinking about all these animals that
Yeah.
right now, while we're sitting here talking, are dying, being
Right.
tortured, and living a life of misery.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of compart
Mentalize. Yeah. Compartmentalize.
yeah, because otherwise
Totally.
you wouldn't be, I know I wouldn't be able to do it
Yeah.
because I'd be destroyed by the fact that the reality of what's happening. But again, like you, is like, oh yeah, the government wouldn't allow these atrocities against, a living being.
Right.
They're really trying to look out for us,
Right.
but really they're not, right?
Right.
Because if they
Right.
were, they would end the meat and dairy industry because it's harmful not only to the soil, the air, the water, but to people's health. I mean,
Right.
that's
Right.
why our
Connected.
yeah, all the
Yeah.
diseases that's happening, it's
Right.
due to the animals we're eating. And now every time you turn around and you look at newspaper or you see the TV, something's being recalled, and people are
Yeah.
still not making the connection that
Yeah.
it's being recalled because our soil, our water, our air
Uh-huh.
is being, poisoned. And then, of course, if you use poison water or poison soil, how could you expect to have, food that's not tainted?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then just on that point too, like bird flu, that we're experiencing right now, like that is a direct result of factory farming and like confining animals in these horrible conditions where viruses, that are like perfect breeding grounds for viruses to mutate and spread. And it's jumped from wild birds to the domesticated birds to cows and all these other species now, like cats and now humans are starting to get sick. And I'm just starting to see that there's coverage in the news, but the coverage in the news, it's like there's still no remote consideration that like, well, maybe we need to end animal farming. Like that is not anywhere near a part of the conversation, but that is the only real solution to end, like you said. I mean, it's just so, such a like cascade of problems that are all linked.
Right.
Yeah.
That linked to animal agriculture.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
we're not saying um, where what I would like to see is there are programs out there. I know of two. Formation, I think, is one of them,
Transformation.
where
Yeah. Yeah.
transformation, where they help individuals get out of
Hmm.
the animal agriculture
Yeah.
business, you know,
Yeah.
and help them to set up something that is better for all of
Right.
us,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
instead
Yeah.
of continuously killing animals, because I forget how many animals now have been killed because they've
Mhm.
gotten bird flu or
Yeah.
they've gotten
Yeah.
something else and they just get
Right.
killed where
Right. Right.
they didn't need to be, you
Right.
know, kind of
Yeah.
thing. So tell me, how do you think one teaches or shares the concept of reverence with
Mhm.
others, especially younger generations? Some of them are on board, but some of them are not, because obviously we're still being conditioned by all
Right.
traditions and our society.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's such an important question. I mean, I do believe that we are innate, that we have an innate compassion, that we have an innate connection with the other animals, with whom we share the planet. And like you said, I think that it's conditioned out of us, it's taught out of us. And so at least, especially with young people, I think, like what a gift to have a parent who fosters that compassion and respects that compassion and doesn't try to like teach it out of you, right? Unfortunately, I think most kids, don't have that, because their parents have been already culturally conditioned to turn that off. But I think, it's just, showing modeling the way that animals should be treated, and honoring, like, when we see that compassion in others, really honoring it, and like letting, I mean, I think we also in our society, we treat it like it's something like silly or soft, and it gets so sidelined, when I think it's the most centrally important issue, honestly, for like how we are all going to live on this planet. Like, if we can treat the animals, these sentient beings, the way we do, by the trillion, we act as if the life within them, like we treat them as if they were inanimate objects, right? We completely disregard and disrespect the light within them, the life, the consciousness. And I think, I mean, I don't know, in all the ways possible, for us to see, those of us who see it, I guess that's it. It's like, I feel like those of us who see it, we have such a responsibility just to share, like, what we see. I mean, it's just so much of it is just having your eyes open. It's like, I think for those of us who see it, it's like, how could you not? But I think, again, it's that cultural conditioning is like so powerful, that you have so many people who are, real animal lovers. They love dogs and cats, but then they're eating chickens and pigs and cows and fish, etc. And it's just that, cognitive dissonance and that willful blindness. And I think, showing people both the horrors of what we're doing to the animals, but also the beauty of who they are. And that's, so much of, like, I think with my little sanctuary, it's such an opportunity to show like who they really are when they're not commodified and they're not exploited, but they're allowed to just be themselves and express their own true nature. And they're magical. They're amazing. We're like them in so many ways, and then we're different in so many ways. But I think we're more alike than different. You look in the eyes of a chicken, or a cat, or a little lizard or something, and there's just a consciousness, and we all want to live, be free from suffering.
Yeah. And just like the humans, we have lots of things that are similar, and we have lots of things that are different,
Right.
and that's
Right.
okay, because
Right.
there's room for all of it.
Right.
Like they say, it's like when you have a piece of pie, it's just a piece of pie. Everybody still, makes up the
Uh-huh.
rest of the pie. So nobody's taking
Right.
anything away from you.
Right.
And,
Right.
so let's talk about your awakening respect and compassion for all sentient beings.
Okay, sure. So it's a small nonprofit animal rights group. When we started it, I was living in Mobile, so it's really still like based in Mobile. I'm not that far from Mobile, but all of our events really take place in Mobile. We tried to advocate for primarily we focus on the animals that other groups are not focusing on. So that means, probably not doing much in terms of like dogs and cats, because there are a million organizations who are doing a good job of advocating for dogs and cats. So but we do focus primarily on like a pro-vegan message, because the vast majority of the animals who we harm are in animal agriculture, and that's such a issue that other people aren't thinking about. So we do like we used to do a vegan cafe every month, which was great, and we were just feeding people by donation. So no, you didn't have to pay anything, or you could donate, but trying to feed people like delicious and healthy vegan foods. And then we were doing like a speaker series. We've now, in large part because I'm so busy taking care of the animals at the sanctuary, we're now just doing like a couple of events a year. We do an annual vegan chili cook-off at a local microbrewery, which is super fun because we bring out like a real general audience. Like a lot of non-vegans come and they all eat vegan chili and they see that like life is fun and good and delicious and we're not missing anything. We do a holiday tasting where we try to show people, all the holiday foods that are available and also just there's community still. You don't have to give up friends and family and community and there's so many traditions that we can maintain as we just make them more compassionate. But we'll also do things like sort of sporadically at this point, but rodeo protests, circus protests. Last year we advocated for the horses that are used during the Mardi Gras parades here, but just trying to again advocate for the animals that nobody else is advocating for, but within like a very intersectional framework, like all sentient beings. We want to have respect and compassion for all sentient beings of all species, humans and non-humans.
Right, right. And you mentioned your sanctuary, Sweet Peeps.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that and your residence.
Yes, thank you. So, okay, so I could talk about this for 12 hours, so I'm going to try to be brief. So, in January of 2019, there was a chicken farm in Colorado that went bankrupt, and they turned off the heat and stopped feeding the 40,000 birds in their sheds. I've since learned that like this is not that uncommon, because the chicken industry is so bad for everyone, including the farmers. They go bankrupt all the time, and then the animals themselves. There are no laws that protect them. So whatever they do to depopulate them, and they make an insurance claim. But so a local sanctuary in Colorado, 11 Arms, found out what was happening, and they just organized this like massive rescue, and activists from all over the country went out and they rescued as many as they could, which I think in total was about 600. And I just like saw something on Facebook and just very like reflexively, I said, well, like I don't know anything about chickens, but I'll take two. Because they were like in the sheds and it was like they could only rescue as many as they had homes for. And there were obviously there weren't enough homes. And so I said I'd take two. I ended up taking 8. At the time I was living in my dad had recently passed away, and I was living in his house in West Mobile in a neighborhood with a homeowners association that limited me to 4 animals. And by the time I took in the chickens combined with my dogs and cats, I was up to like 22, and I knew I had to get out. So I ended up moving to Lillian and buying like a few acres. And then once I had the space, I just kind of kept taking in more. So at this point, that was January 19 when it started. At this point, I think currently we have 27. Mostly I have from the beginning focused on Cornish crosses, which are otherwise known as broiler chickens. In part because they have very different care requirements from other chickens. And because like the first chickens I took in, I knew nothing about chickens. I took in, a group of Cornish crosses. I learned about them and how to care for them. I don't really know how to care for other chickens. And a lot of people who take care of other chickens don't really know how to care for Cornishes. So it's just made sense that I focus on them, but I love them so much. They're so like some of the cruel irony of the incredible genetic manipulations that we've done to them is that they're so like sweet and docile and like so we've bred so much of the wildness out of them. I mean, they still have instincts. Like as soon as I bring someone home and you put them on the ground, they want to dust bathe and peck at the ground and sunbathe and scratch, and they have all these very strong instincts, but I think like people will often talk about them as like the puppy dogs of the chicken world. They're all unique, they all have different personalities, just like our dogs and cats do. But they're just they're as a species, they're like peaceful and gentle and sweet, curious. They're so much smarter than I ever knew, than most people know. They've totally changed my life.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is that we're so abusive because, like you said, they're sweet, they're docile, so they seem to go ahead and take advantage and exploit these sweet animals.
Yeah.
Because of that, and then most of them are female. So
Hmm.
they take advantage. So,
Hmm.
so when I'm talking to people and some um, person will say, "Oh, I'm a feminist," and men and women can be feminists. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be just
Right. Right.
women. Uh, but they don't make the connection.
Yeah.
Okay, look at this. Most of the population being exploited in animals are female,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
and most of them are gentle.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how do you morally, ethically say you're okay with that? It
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
baffles the mind,
Right. Right.
how you
Yeah.
can
It's
do
that
that.
big disconnect, that wall people put up between the human species and like the rest of life on Earth. I mean, I think that's just our whole like worldview in the West in particular is we see ourselves as being separate and superior. And we're like destroying the planet as a result. It's just like I think that is the fundamental problem. We have to learn to see that like we are, or remember that we're part of the natural world. We coexist on this planet, but we don't live like that. We live like the whole world is here for us. And
Right?
it's not, and it's backfiring on us.
Yeah, and we forget that first of all, we are animals,
Right,
right?
right, right,
So that's
right.
one thing. Number two
Yeah,
is all the animals in the world, they are all working for the ecosystem, and the only person who's supposed to be the smartest
right,
is destroying the planet, which
right,
is the human.
right, right.
So,
Yeah,
I'm with the animals.
yeah. Same, same, same.
I'm with the animals. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
And
it
I
just,
think, I mean, we do have this, like, humans do have some like unique capacities. Like, I think there's no denying that, but it's like divorced from an understand from wisdom. Like, we have all this kind of like intelligence, but when it's divorced from the most like fundamental wisdom of our connection with the rest of the world, it just is so destructive. Like, if we could turn our intelligence, if we could refocus, redirect it for good, with that deeper wisdom, we could, I think, I mean, like I think we could do good in the world. But we need to change so much of the way we approach our, understand our role on Earth and our relationship with the rest of the animals and the planet.
I totally agree. I mean, it's like someone saying, "Oh, what the things that bother me now, and I try to correct,
Mhm.
is like when people call an animal an it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
No, it's a
Yeah.
he or she, or if you don't know, a they, if you want
Right. Right.
the
Right.
thing, but they're not,
Right.
like you said before, people
Right.
consider them objects, but they're not
Right.
objects. They're living, breathing
Right.
beings who
Right.
want to be loved and who want to have their own lives,
Right.
devoid of us exploiting them.
Mhm.
So, so that's one thing. And the other thing, recently, like when I'm watching TV and somebody makes a joke and it's something that harms an animal and everybody's laughing, and I'm like thinking,
Mhm.
what an idiot you are,
Yeah. Right. Right.
because that's not funny. Not only
Yeah.
that, but alongside of all the recalls and our soil degradation and our pollution in the air and the water, you see a lot of violence in the world. And
Mhm.
I am sure that if we were more compassionate towards animals and we kind of focus more on community rather than the one individual,
Yeah.
that we would have a much kinder world, we would have a much livable world, and we would find that we have, like you said, we humans can be intelligent and come up with some creative
Right.
solutions to our
Right.
coexistence where we don't have to harm an animal in any way for any fashion.
Right, right, right. And I mean, that is like when people talk about like, I don't know, whether we're carnivores or omnivores or herbivores, whatever, like I think there's no doubt that we can, I think we're clearly omnivores and we can survive on eating animal products or eating plant-based products. So if we can survive, like I think I've heard Will Tuttle talk about like what a gift it is that we can survive on, like we can be herbivores. How beautiful is that? That, but and unlike any other animal, we actually have a choice. Like, for the carnivorous animals, they don't have a choice. That is who they are. So there's like no moral issue. For us, it's a moral issue because there's a choice involved. But we do have that choice to be peaceful animals who coexist and help. It's like also there's that idea from the Christian tradition about having dominion, which I'm not in love with the whole framework of that. But the idea, but a lot of people will interpret that as like this unique role of caretaking, of being a steward of the planet. And
It's more of a steward of a plant.
yeah. And it's like the only thing that I don't love about that is just like I feel like there's still often an implied like hierarchy. And I don't believe that
Right.
we're superior, but I do believe that we have a unique capacity to care for others. And again, what a beautiful choice that is. How beautiful our lives are when they're filled with love, as opposed to, the indifference or violence.
Right.
Uh, so commonly.
Thank you again, Tracey, for being on the show. If you'd like to leave us with some words for our listeners, that'd be awesome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I so enjoyed the conversation, and your perspective. I feel like we're very simpatico. Just yeah, I guess final words. Just it can be, you look at the world and you look at the problems, and we can get overwhelmed. But I think we have to remember, like that we are the ones we've been waiting for. We are connected to each other, like we're all in our own little spheres. We all have had the same awakening because it's truth. And we've found it, and it's truth. It's real, and we just need to remember that, like, we are part of a long line of compassionate humans who have seen what we see, and it's up to all of us together collectively to create a better world for all beings. And I'm so grateful for you and people like you and everyone out there who feels this way. I know I'm not alone, and everything we do matters. So I'm grateful to you and to everybody watching for being a part of this.
Thank you very much. And definitely concur. And my saying is always, if you have a pulse, you have a purpose. And
Yeah.
vegans are people who are seeing the truth. And like you said, each and every one of us counts, and we collectively can change the world. Even if it's a little step at a time, just don't give up. We can do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye.